Hello and welcome to Called Bank Sports. The Utah Jazz have had what is, in my estimate, a pretty good week after I feel like everyone pulled the fire alarm Monday evening after the Bucks game. Probably ourselves included on that. That was kind of a disappointing game, but being able to go out and absolutely destroy the Chicago Bulls. And I guess once I say absolutely destroy the Bulls, I don't know what I can say, how I can describe what the Jazz did to the Clippers, but do really well. Get to watch Donovan Mitchell put up 25 points in the third quarter on Wednesday. Get to watch Alexander Walker have a couple good games, see Hernan Gomez a bit, and have Butler. Most of the points came in garbage time, but still lead the Jazz in scoring last night. It's just been a really fun week to be a Jazz fan, I think. And I'm just trying to enjoy it right now. I know that there's some stress. The Jazz are a game up on the Mavericks, and they do have the tiebreaker against the Mavericks, as well as the tiebreaker against the Denver Nuggets, barring anything crazy happening. I guess if somehow the Nuggets pass the Jazz do lose their current tiebreak against the Mavs. But I'm happy with where Utah's at, and it is going to be rough. There are definitely some big games coming down the stretch against the Nets and the Celtics and the Mavericks, but it's exciting. And while there are injuries on the Jazz, which we're going to get into, I personally feel like they're kind of hitting their stride and going to be going into the playoffs, putting themselves in the best position to win. But what are your thoughts, Dale? What am I a bit too optimistic? Am I being a bit too happy-go-lucky this morning?
It feels like complete opposite from last week. Because last week we're like, oh yeah, they're probably falling down to the 6th seed and they're first round exit. Oh well. But so it's maybe a little bit quick of a turnaround after a 2-1 week, but they played. I guess the Clippers aren't a tough team. The Clippers they're not the team that we expect. Like when they're healthy, but they beat the Bulls, which are a tough team. They put up an effort against the Bucks. Honestly, I think there were a few turning points in that game that just a few things went a little bit differently. The Jazz probably would have walked away with a win there, so I'm not going to put it too much on them. It just that loss came at a bad time where they were already looking pretty bad, where they almost lost the 4th seed for half a second. So I'm not like 100% all the way in optimistic just after that week, but it was great to see some things. I love the Clippers game, like you said, seeing Butler do what he could do, and that kind of seeing Alexander Walker do what he could do. That gives us some more hope that we do have that young talent that a lot of people say the Jazz don't have. Let's just give it a few years for them.
I haven't pushed in all the chips. I haven't called up someone in Vegas and say, hey, put it all on the Jazz. Haven't went that far, but I do feel more confident about where this team is going. And again, like if they look bad this week or the next week, that is going to be concerning to me. But right now, like you beat the Clippers without Donovan and without Bojan. I'm not really concerned about their injuries. I think they're going to come back, and I am just kind of assuming it was a bit more of let's take some precautions. I know Mitchell isn't necessarily a fan of that, but I do think that it's still something he would do. He doesn't. I think that
it worked in this case. Like you got the win, so I think it was a good move.
And I think that he saw last playoffs how when he's hurt, he's just not nearly as good. He's still, one of the better players in the league. Like he's still top 25. But had he been at full health, I think the Jazz might be able to beat the Clippers without Kawhi. But it was pretty obvious that Mitchell was not doing too well that series. So when the Jazz are looking at the 4 seed and solely due to the fact that Steph Curry is out, could maybe sneak up and get the 3 seed, which again, then you're playing the Nuggets, and that is scary. But so are the Mavericks at this point. Like the playoffs are just scary in the West. Even if you're the 1 seed, and like you could end up playing the Clippers or the Lakers or even a Pelicans team that's been doing pretty well since the All-Star break. Like there's not any situation where I'm like, oh yeah, give me that team because I know we'll sweep them. It's just, this could be the best playoffs I've ever seen in my life. Like I think that's fair. I think typically you look at it and you're like, oh, by the time we get to 7 or 8, they're pretty bad. And yes, the Lakers are pretty bad. But still, LeBron James is LeBron James.
Yeah, he dropped 50 like what like 2 out of 3 games. Like
Yeah.
come to playoffs, that's tough to beat.
So I know that I started off talking about how, the young players have had decent weeks, especially Alexander Walker. Like, he's exciting and he's been showing. I thought his ceiling was Jordan Clarkson when he came here, which is not a bad ceiling to have by any stretch of the imagination. But he's been looking like he could be a bit more than Jordan Clarkson here. And while I know you said you don't necessarily want to see a lot more of him, since that doesn't necessarily mean good things for the Jazz, like, it is exciting to see they've got another year with him. They can pick up his rookie extension, um, and it's just exciting to see like the Jazz have some young blood that could turn out to be really effective.
And it's huge when you look into the future because younger talent is cheaper. The Jazz don't have a lot of money to throw around, and if we can develop them quicker and they can contribute, like I've not seen enough from them this year, as you mentioned. I don't want to see too much more of
Yeah,
them this season because playoffs are right around the corner. But next season, if we can develop them, if they can contribute, like when you get away from your star players, every other player you kind of have to measure on like a production versus salary kind of thing. Because if they're taking too much salary cap and not producing, that roster is going to have a tough time getting to the finals. So having that young talent is huge for the future and for the like lifespan of this Jazz core to have a chance at winning a finals. So
yeah,
that's because I wasn't 100% out on this year. I knew there was a chance. I knew they weren't looking good for the past couple of weeks. But what I was mainly worried about the next 3 or 4 seasons when you start paying Rudy Gobert like $50 million or whatever that crazy number is. So
it's going to be crazy. I'm interested to see what happens when the new TV deal comes up. I'm how much players are going to be making. It's going to be insane. But it is kind of interesting when you have Butler, who had a great night last night, Alexander Walker, who's had a couple good nights this week. Um, and I think it's probably fair to say that they're both fighting for a future starting spot. Now, obviously, Alexander Walker would play shooting guard, and Butler would play point guard. But I think that you're pretty much looking and saying, okay, whoever ends up being the best one, unless we can get something better, they're going to be starting backcourt alongside Donovan Mitchell. Um, and obviously, a lot can happen. Trades can happen. The Jazz could get even luckier in a draft. And like there are things that could happen, but I feel like if you look at the league right now, especially where Mike Conley has one more year left on his deal after this one, and there's a decent chance he'll be done, and he'll see fit to retire. I don't know if that's what I'll want him to do at the time, but it'll be interesting to see who kind of emerges as the front runner for that starting role alongside Donovan Mitchell in a couple of years.
I love that as a fan, seeing that kind of battle where you have two good options. Hopefully, they turn out to be both good options.
Yeah,
I'm kind of on Team Butler because it's kind of fun to see the guy you drafted, but honestly, whoever's better is better, and we'll live with that.
And I'm not opposed to seeing either of them come off the bench, like especially if they're doing well, like Butler as your backup point guard, or Alexander Walker kind of slotting into the Jordan Clarkson role as a scorer, maybe not as a high volume, low high volume, low efficiency guy. And hopefully,
High volume, low production. That's awesome.
High volume, low production. Yeah, no, that gets to the point where you start describing someone like, I don't know, Russell Westbrook. But I guess he jacked up a three and it went in, and they won the game because of it. So all of a sudden, he's a good player now. Have to ignore all the other stats this year. But I think overall, it's been a week where Jazz fans can feel a lot more optimistic about things. And you totally mentioned it. Like, we've been so hot and cold on this team. Like, it's been back and forth. And to be fair, they've been hot and cold as a team. And I do still think, that they have a chance of being a team. And this is just the team I'm always going to compare it to, since in my living memory, that's who it was, like the 2011 Dallas Mavericks. And be able to come out like, be like, okay, we have a team that's been established, that hasn't seen a lot of playoff success, But like, we have this team that, and I guess Dirk had made it to the finals before, which no one on this team can say they've done. But we have a team that like we know has good talent, and all of a sudden, if the ball bounces their way, it's not unthinkable to see them in the finals. But again, like I said, I'm not calling up a friend in Vegas and putting down my life savings on the Jazz anytime soon. They're still definitely more of an underdog, but it's not, a 15 seed beating Kansas by any means. It's not that crazy of an upset.
Yeah, so I agree with all that. Like it, and just like let's dream a little bit about that. That would be such a fun storyline to see come out, because that's a team that no one's expecting. People have taught, like, we've seen people disrespect Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. I think there's a little bit less of that going on, but those are two stars who have been disrespected for a lot of their careers. Mitchell has a lot more left in the tank than Gobert, so we'll see how his career plays out. But then with the All-Star game coming to Salt Lake next year, like the championship, like we get to show off the trophy to everyone in the league. Like
that would be awesome.
That would be such a fun moment for Jazz fans. Obviously, however the championship comes will be such a fun moment for Jazz fans. But I don't know. The story kind of writes itself if that happens.
I mean, it really does. It would be so exciting, coming off a year where you're the best record in the league, you look unstoppable. Some injuries happen in the playoffs, and you just get outplayed. Like, I'm not saying the Jazz beat the Clippers if they're fully healthy. I do think after the fact that the Jazz won the first two games in the series, though, that if the Jazz are fully healthy, like Donovan's not hurt and Mike Conley's back, you're lying to yourself if you say, "Oh yeah, it's obvious the Clippers win." Like, you're lying to yourself. I'll just say that. But it's definitely something that would be a great story. And, the Jazz have put themselves in position to win titles before. And while, this year maybe doesn't seem like the best year from a regular season standpoint, I mean, all of a sudden, Devin Booker has a foot on the line for a 3-point shot that sends it to overtime instead of winning it. And the Jazz win it in overtime in Game 7. That would be hilarious. That would be just the funniest thing in the world if Devin Booker shot a 2 instead of a 3 and it was just copy paste of Nets Bucks. But I do think that comparing the Jazz to the Bucks isn't entirely unwarranted. Like, yes, you don't have Giannis. And I mean, Giannis, a top 3 player in the world right now. But you still do have Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, who are both top 10 caliber players. Maybe some people don't put them there, but they are. So overall, I think that this week has given me some more optimism. And obviously for anyone who watched last week's episode, yeah, I know, I can't pick a side. I'm sorry.
That's what makes it fun.
That's what, are you saying that, just having an absolutely, what honestly most people would coin as an abusive relationship with a sports team is fun, Dale?
We need to push everything to the extreme.
I need more commitment from the Jazz. I need them to start, pulling their own weight here. I give them everything, and I need them to give me everything in return. No, I know that the players give everything they've got, and these are going to be some fun playoffs, and I'm excited to see what happens. I don't know. Are there any last thoughts from you, Dale, before we wrap this up?
I don't know. This is probably the most fun next few months of basketball, so I'm excited to see what the Jazz bring. I'm hopeful, like, if they can exceed expectations, that will be so much fun. But like, I feel like I always talk about this come playoff time. Like, right now it's March Madness, NBA playoffs are coming up, the season's wrapping up. Just take a step back and enjoy it as a basketball fan. This is only a few months of the year that you really get to get this high caliber of basketball content and at such a volume. So I'm excited to see what happens. And yeah, go Jazz.
Awesome.